That's what's happening here. The earth is being balanced in many, many ways. And for the first time in our history, for a long time, the balance is swinging back to the side of good. For those of you who are interested in the net that surrounds the earth, and that's one thing I wanted to deal with, but we've really been taken up with other issues at the moment. The planet Saturn has rings which are not made of ice but are made of crystal, and I know many of you are aware that that is an aerial, it's a transmitter, and on the far side of the moon, what you call the dark side of the moon, there was a booster or a relay station that has actually been switched off. I'm not sure which faction has switched that off, but it's meant now that if you are a very, very powerful energy soul, you can now potentially escape the planet fairly easily. And some of these so-called parents are deciding that the game's up, it's all over with, and they're going to leave the planet. And that's exactly what they intend to do. Human elite, two factions. You go below that level, we have two groups now, absolutely diametrically opposed. We mentioned the Knights Templars. Believe it or not, the Knights Templars have a fairly beneficial assistance here because they don't want the end of the earth. Their job is to prepare and protect, and are thoroughly frightened to death by their brethren on the other side who are literally looking at mass destruction. So even within the highest ranks, they are splitting openly and obviously. There have always been these schisms, but now they are open to the public. Petroleum. We're reaching a position now in this world where it's no longer viable to drill out. I mean, $70, $80 a barrel, what is it at the moment? $60 a barrel. Well, even at about $80 a barrel, it's not actually viable to pump oil out. So we're going to see a moving away from petroleum. But not because people believe in the planet, not because they think it's wrong, but simply because the corporations are not going to make the sort of money that they think. But the clever point here is that it's moving regardless. So they think they're making the move because it's a financial situation. The reality is that other energies are at work here, ensuring that they are being forced to actually move towards a different sort of energy. What we have to watch for is the corporations will move from one group to another. So terrorist attacks have been used for twofold. First, to destabilize a community, but more importantly actually to put pressure on that government. So when the Canadian Parliament had the shooting, that wasn't to destabilise the people, it was to put pressure on the Canadian government not to ditch the US dollar. So many terrorist attacks are not genuine, they are created by an elite organisation to put pressure on the local government. Explosion, there is a very small group of crazy people who genuinely think that some sort of disaster would benefit them. Because remember, they are so disassociated from us that they have no interest in us at all. So a large explosion causing infrastructural damage might play into their hands. We'll talk about what they would see that's helping them in a minute. Fake alien landing. This was sort of pushed away about a year ago. People were saying, no, that's not going to happen. We must remember that Laura Eisenhower, who actually spoke with Wernher von Braun, and Wernher von Braun actually told her years ago that that was the plan, to do a fake alien invasion. That was the point. And we have evidence, and you've seen the presentations I've done to give you evidence. I'm just going to push a couple of pictures now. The reason for any disaster is to, from their perspective, create a new world order. And you've seen that whether it's on banknotes or whether it's on presentations. You know what the new world order is. I'm not going to try and tell you. Remember, this is not our vision of how things are going to work. This is their vision. Our vision is completely different. This doesn't mean this is going to come to pass. This simply means this is what they wish. And I've shown perhaps many, many people outside of this room that ordinary, decent humans can change their own timeline. Right, here we go. This is Pope Francis, and you remember, of course, that he said in a speech he would baptize aliens. Don't see this as a one-off strange. This was part of an orchestrated program to begin the possibility of an alien landing. Why else would the Pope do that? Why else would the Pope recently go to America and make a speech about the world? The Pope doesn't speak for the Hindus, the Muslims, the Jews. He only speaks for one faction of the Christian religion. So why wasn't he actually at the United Nations making the speech? Why did he go to America? Because he is their linchpin for the New World Order. He is the key man. Remember the prophecies? Not this one here, but the one we have at the moment is the last Pope. That's the prophecy. But this one is important because he was the one, who said, Pope Francis, I'm going to baptize aliens if they arrive. And in fact, a journalist said, did we hear you right? You won't have seen this. Did you mean aliens? And Pope Francis said, and I'm going to get this word perfect, yes, that's right, the green things from Mars. This was a genuine comment. Now, we're not saying they're green from Mars, but basically the Pope was saying to him, yes, that's exactly right. If an alien comes here and wants to be baptized, I'll do that. There we are. So, we'll have to remember the Sumerian rules, the clay tablets. Wynne alluded to that. Okay, Zachariah Stitchin was absolutely correct. In other words, wouldn't it be interesting if somebody landed in a spaceship and said, I'm your God, I created you? Very interesting. But in order for that to have any type of resonance, somebody on this planet who is a religious person would have to hook it in by saying, oh yes, God's arrived. Let's just go back a bit. Yes, well done. Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry, not just a visionary, but somebody who had seen a real alien spacecraft when he was on an internal flight, looking out the porthole of the window, saw it, and then went and connected with some psychic groups, and then the FBI and then the CIA. And this is taken from Star Trek, and I just love it because God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Ghost. And this is serious. You see, you are all awake. So you're sitting here and thinking, oh, come on, for God's sake. But there are so many people who are not awake. And whether they believe it or not, there are people in positions of responsibility who actually think they can sell it. Hell, they sold 9/11, didn't they? In other words, you have to appeal to everybody. You can't just appeal to one faith. So what we've got here is a government or governments that funded, and it was very expensive because that is a real police officer, they had to be paid, the fire brigade were involved in each one, and so were the ambulance. The children would come into school as normal. The only people who knew were the head, the deputy head, the secretary, and the class teacher. Certain classes where children were described as interesting or developed were chosen, so it's not the whole school. They would be brought into the assembly area, and then the class teacher or group teacher would say, a UFO, and that's exactly the word they use, a UFO has crashed in the playground. We're waiting for the police to tell us it's okay to go outside. A police officer, a real police officer, not an actor, comes in and says it's okay. So the 2 or 3 classes go out. There is a model of a spacecraft crashed into the part of the school. The tape is around it and the police officer's there. Why would you do that when you sell to adults? There is no such thing as aliens and UFOs don't exist. Why would you spend thousands of pounds in England and Wales to run this? And when I challenged them on it, they said it's about inclusion. So I said, how can it be inclusive to include something that you say doesn't exist? Oh, well, we don't know, it's just literally, that's what it comes under. The part of the national curriculum was inclusion. What I would suggest to you is this is programming to get these children, so by the time they're older and this is mocked up, then they buy it. Here's a woman's private company which is making sure she can't get her face taken. And she was part of the contract, and she would go around and be dressed in a biological suit and do testings. These are really young children, so therefore the UFO is very small, so that it doesn't overpower them. But look, we've got a crater where it's gouged as it's landed, and little fires burning here as well. That reminds me of the Roswell. So, and the obligatory cone and tape. And as I've said to people time and time again, if you are told that there's a UFO, would you like to come and have a look at it? You know that's fake. But when military knock on your door at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, we're moving you out to a reception centre 5 miles away, then that's a real crash. This is not a real photo, it's a mock-up, but it's so good that that's actually what one of the species would look like. Okay, so that is, I think whoever's created that has either seen them themselves or has spoken to a number of people and really created it very well. I love the picture. It's not a trick, this is a genuine picture. You have to understand that the Queen is seen not as the most powerful thing on the planet, but as the person we get our approval from. So Bush here is acting as a little boy, really, really excited that he is next to somebody who can give him approval. If you understand the Satanism, if you understand the way it works, we have what we call a grandmother. Not like you would understand grandmother, grandmother. And the grandmother is the controller. And the reason we like it is because George Bush is giving the devil sign. We'll just go back. There he is. Okay? And that's why he's got the grinny face, because he's doing something that he's always wanted to do. Be with grandmother. 1969, the very first time that the 666 symbol and the devil's symbol were used on the same photograph. Prior to this, they've always been one or the other. This is the first time it was put together. You need to understand that the Beatles were a good group of people who were manipulated because from the elite's point of view, it was too good an option to miss. Anybody got this LP? Does it ring a bell with anybody? Okay. What you're seeing is not a trick photography, it's not photoshopped. This is a satanic force. I'm going to tell you, because you know that I met John Lennon, and you know that I met John Lennon's father several occasions. I can tell you that all of these boys here were drugged for this photograph. Yeah. This is a picture of meat from a butcher and dolls, girl dolls, I think, with their heads ripped off. That's what you're looking at here. Look, that head is not attached to the body. Look at their faces, absolutely shocked. But this is part of a publicity. Now, this picture wasn't used because you can't sell with faces like that. That face won't sell. So they were told, you need to be happy. So the next picture came from the LP, which was sold and then pulled back. Here you go. It's called Beatles Yesterday and Today. This is a genuine LP release. So why would you use perhaps potentially the best known, the most successful pop group? Why would you stick broken dolls on them and pieces of meat? Why wasn't there a huge outcry? Well, there was, but not enough to really get to the bottom of it. What is going on here? Why are we seeing babies like this? This is the manipulation that the general public, who are not here today, unfortunately, are just oblivious to.